Welcome to Mentoring in Real Life, where we talk about what it takes to find and be a great mentor. I'm Angela, and together with my co-host Bill, we know the power of mentoring and what it can do in your life on both sides of the table. If you're interested in learning tips, tricks, and hearing stories about mentoring, you're in the right place. Come join us. Hey, Bill, how's it going?
Never been this happy. How about yourself?
I've never been this curious. So, Bill, you and I are recording this on the heels of attending a conference. We attended the M conference in Los Angeles, and M conference is held by Manager Tools, which is a company that you and I have been we've been aligned with for many, many years. And we really like a lot of their products and whatnot. And this was your first M conference.
It was indeed. And even though I'm pseudo-retired, I got a ton out of attending and networking and working with all these professionals in the same areas that we're talking about in our podcast, but also obviously as it applies to a broader management conversation. And so it was invaluable. And I kind of feel bad that it took me all this time to get to my first M conference. The Manager Tools folks ran a fantastic interaction and event. And so, yeah, it pertains quite heavily to the discussion we're going to have today.
Yeah, because one of the things that we realized while we were there is, man, in terms of mentoring and the discussion between mentors and mentees, in our experience, very few people relative to the size of an organization actually take advantage of training and conferences. And as much as, when we've been in management roles, we've pushed it, often people don't take advantage of it. They don't feel like they have the time, or maybe that they don't feel comfortable asking for the budget to do so. And so really, what we wanted to talk about today is mentors really supporting mentees and helping guide mentees on how to find training and conferences that are really good for them, and then how to make sure that they come back demonstrating the value of their participation in it.
And I'm going to say yes and to that conversation. Sometimes we generally think about that as a discussion for junior or mid-grade folks, and I'm going to suggest that it applies equally to senior managers. The M conference was a terrific example of meeting and networking and learning from senior executives across a number of different industries. That you suggested that sometimes people think they don't have the time. In my own experience as a senior manager, I often said, I don't have time to go training, but everybody else should be going to training. And that's a missed opportunity for me. And so I would certainly, if I was mentoring a senior executive right at this point, I would be telling them, don't forget about the training you need for yourself as well as for the people in your organization.
Mm-hmm. Like you said, you are regretful that this year was the first time you attended the M conference.
Absolutely, because there was so much learning that I did that I know I could have applied when I was still a senior executive in the government. And so that, as I said, was a missed opportunity. And I would be encouraging folks not to miss that opportunity in their own careers as they become more and more senior. That doesn't mean they do need to do less networking or less training or less conferencing.
Absolutely. And so, Bill, why would you say, what are some reasons a mentor would want to encourage a mentee to attend a training or conference?
Well, so as we talked about earlier on, first part of mentoring is listening a lot. And as you listen to your mentee and the things that they want to do, you'll probably be able to start to identify skills or technical proficiencies that they need to improve or they don't have at all in some cases. And so it's important to share those thoughts with the mentee and advise them on the types of training and conferences they should be attending or seeking out to get those skills. As a mentor, you have sort of a different perspective. It's not like I'm bound by just the supervisory duties for this particular project or this particular effort. The mentees told you about things they want to do in their career. You can start to identify the things that they need to do, not only for their current job, but for perhaps their next job. And help them identify skills that they need to develop in order to keep on moving up the ladder.
And we're not saying that it's only the mentor's responsibility. I mean, certainly supervisors would provide advice and counsel to their employees on this as well. What we're asserting, though, is that mentors may have a unique insight into the mentee's intent in their career that a supervisor may or may not have. and would be able to advise the mentee, especially if the mentee is talking to the mentor about some gaps that they might have in, I'm not comfortable in delivering presentations. I'm not comfortable in understanding what the technical how we're moving forward technically across the organization or the company or whatever it might be, that the mentee might be talking with the mentor in a way that they may not talk with the supervisor. And the mentor might just have a different lens by which to give advice and counsel to the mentee.
Absolutely. And building on that thought, the other thing that the mentor can bring that I would hope most supervisors bring, but not always. If you're a supervisor who is very heavily involved in the technical aspects of the work, maybe people skills are not the first thing that come to mind when you want people to go to training. But as people get more senior in their experience, they're going to acknowledge that people skills are easily as important as technical skills, particularly as you move up the chain. If, in fact, part of the mentoring discussion is talking to mentees about you. If you're going to continue to grow your career and get more senior and get more responsibility, and you think you're going to get that simply by being the best technical person in the room, I think you're missing the point. The more senior you get into the organization, the more people skills will become the critical skills you have to have. Technical understanding is still valuable, but people skills as a senior manager become the dominant set of skills you're going to get to exercise. And technical understanding is important, but probably, in my opinion, second to people skills, the more senior you are. That may be almost hurtful to some of the engineers I worked with in the past to hear those kinds of words. But I would suggest that the ones who succeeded well in progressing up the chain recognized that the higher you go, the more you're not the person most responsible for the technical problem solving. And often, certainly I was reminded often as I got older, Bill, we're not going to come to you to help us solve coding problems in this software. We're
What?
not doing a lot of coding in Fortran anymore. So maybe we should have the people who are experts in coding do that. And you help us help manage the people and keep us on the right path and help set a vision. But you're not the technical lead here. And I acknowledge that. And there's any number of smart folks out there who would say, if you're a senior manager and you constantly think you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. And
Exactly right.
so the people skills piece and training that's associated with that is an invaluable piece of the training that you should be recommending for your mentees.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that have those skills naturally. They automatically have the people skills like listening and compassion and directing and patience and delegation and all these people skills that are required when you get more senior in leadership and management chain. And some people, it is not as easy, right? They're much more adept at keeping lists and getting things done, even if it means doing it themselves. And so as soon as the list of tasks requires more people than just themselves to get it done, people skills matter. And leadership challenges become much more behavioral than they do technical the higher up the ladder one climbs. So mentors can help their mentees identify those areas that would be most critical for the mentee's professional growth, as well as the behaviors that will be most beneficial as the mentee's breadth of responsibility increases, both in people and in tasking. What else is important about training and conferences?
Well, certainly one of the most valuable pieces that we even just talked about going to the M conference is the networking that happens at training and at conferences. And that networking is just imperative for growing a career. It doesn't matter whether it's training or conferences. You're going to be talking with a lot of people on breaks. You're going to have opportunities to meet new people and find out what's going on in their industry, find out what's going on in their part of the organization, and drive lots and lots of learning that goes on there. The knowledge sharing that goes on not just in, from the trainer to the trainees, but amongst the trainees, amongst the conference goers, it just is phenomenally important. And it increases the visibility that you're going to have. It builds your reputation, particularly if you find that as a way to build teams and be the people that other people, be the person that other people want on your team. That kind of stuff is the thing that makes it invaluable for the reputation that you want to build as a collaborator, as a leader in the organization. So it's not just about what you know for your career. It's also about who you know and who trusts you and the folks that are willing to help you grow. The big, strong network is going to open doors for you everywhere. It's going to make your learning happen faster, and it's going to amplify the impact that you can have in your career and in your organization.
So, training and conferences really help an individual both develop educationally in skills and such, and in their network. And their network being equally as important as their training and skills, especially as they grow in their career. So, then who figures out then what training or conference a mentee should attend?
Well, as we have said, the mentee is primarily responsible for this relationship, and so I'm going to say that the mentee should take on a very serious primary responsibility for trying to figure out what training or conferences they think they need to go to. But certainly, mentors are going to have plenty of suggestions. They've been around a little bit longer, and they might ask coach-like questions to see which ones might be the most valuable. But they're also probably aware of a broader set of training and conferences than the mentee might be, particularly if the mentee is relatively junior. So, but Angela, now I'm the mentee. How can I figure out what my options are if I'm looking for all that?
Well, certainly, I mean, we're not advocating that mentors keep secrets as far as training and conferences are
I don't
concerned.
think so.
Yeah. So we can of course, ask coach like questions and share what you know. So mentors share what you know. What conferences have you been to? Or what ones have you wish you would have gone to, but you haven't yet? Or what training would you recommend in terms of the skill set development that the mentee would like? So certainly the mentee can ask the mentor for recommendations, and not just the mentor, but really their peers, anybody else that they know in their industry. And they could really look at what industry associations are aligned with their particular industry. Each industry has associations where there's a collective group of folks, like people in retail would have a particular industry association. Certainly, we know in the Department of Defense that there are industry associations as well. That way, the media has industry associations. Look to your industry associations and find out through that network, either, on that website or through that network of folks, what they recommend, where they recommend to go and why, and get some ideas and put down some ideas on paper of training and conferences that might be available to you. There's also like career growth sites. Certainly LinkedIn is one that could have recommendations as well. So taking a look at career growth sites, taking a look at industry associations, and asking your mentor, and good old-fashioned Google or whatever search engine as well could give some really good advice as well.
Undoubtedly, I mean, as obviously ChatGPT or Gemini, or take your pick of the AI that you'd like to ask, and that's all fine. Depending on your circumstance and the network of folks they're probably as good a resource for the recommended or the best training or the ones that might be most valuable, because ChatGPT doesn't know you the way that your friends and networked associates know you, and so it's a great place to start, but it wouldn't be my place to end for the solid recommendations as they apply to me directly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, while obviously we'd encourage people to take advantage of any search that is available out there, make sure you're doing some vetting of the search through your network and through your mentor, through your associates.
Absolutely. And so then I've got a list. I'm a mentee, and I've got a list of training or conferences that I, might want to attend. What would a mentor ask a mentee before encouraging, or if they're, an approval chain of command, approving a training or conference?
Yeah. So, okay, Angela, that sounds like an interesting conference. But what gap are you addressing, or what goal is this supporting? And what are you going to be able to do after attending it that you can't do right now? Basically, what are you going to get out of this? And not only how will it help you, but how will it help your team or your organization? Having a broader thought about that certainly will make it much more likely that somebody up the chain is going to say, okay, if it's just for you personally and it doesn't benefit the team or the organization, that's interesting. I've actually had that experience where somebody came to me as a junior supervisor and wanted to go to some music conference. I said, that's fantastic. I love music too. And if you'd like to crank open your wallet and go pay for that music conference, knock yourself out. But we don't build music around here. So I know it's sort of a dumb example, but it was something that somebody came to me about wanting personal growth. And so when we talk about personal growth in this context, it's personal growth that will benefit you in the job that's paying for this work or paying for the conference or paying for the training. And that seems sort of obvious, but I guess I was caught off guard by a number of times that people came to me wanting to go to training or conference that was not really related to our work. It was good. It probably looked like it was great training. And I'm not trying to go on a big side tangent. I'm trying to focus on the thought that it's not just what skill is that you're trying to build for you as the mentee, but making sure you keep in mind how it benefits your organization, particularly if they're paying for the training. And so a way to sort of phrase that, connected to a goal that matters, I'm talking to you as the mentee, connect this to a goal that matters, something that's either tied to your role or a growth plan or the team's priorities. And what's this going to enable you to deliver for all of those things?
Yeah. So the call to action then for a mentee is when you have a training or conference that you're interested in going to, make sure you can answer the questions. What skill or gap or goal of yours does this support? And what will you be able to do after attending that you can't do now? And to your point, Bill, personal development is all well and good. And we don't discourage that. If you want the company to pay for it, then that personal development needs to help your team or organization as well. And so make sure you can answer how that training or conference helps the team and the organization as well.
And one other item that I forgot to mention we talked about the importance of the networking. If you know that there are significant people in your industry or significant people who might help you be able to solve problems that your team's working on, that's another good reason that you might want to attend a specific conference, because you know somebody is going to be presenting there and you'll have access to those people. So it's not just how it's benefiting you, but maybe who you'd be able to network with specifically at a given conference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so then, okay, the mentee can answer yes to some or all of those questions. What is a tool that a mentor can use or can give a mentee to determine if that training or conference is worth it?
Well, there's probably a set of basic questions that you would want to be asking, have the mentee asking themselves, and certainly the mentor can ask the questions, you know, is this content, relevant and current? If you're going to go to this, we're going to spend a bunch of money to send you. Is it relevant to what we're doing? And so that means like really relevant, not just sort of a nice to know topic that you think is nice to know as the mentee, but you can't draw a straight line between the content and what it is that your team is working on, or what your industry, what your organization is trying to solve. And so there's the nice to know topics, and then will the people who are briefing at conducting a training or briefing at a conference, are these the credible experts? The quality of the insights you're going to be gaining matters. And so you want to go to industry leading conferences and places where you're going to get networked with and get exposed to presentations from the people who are leading in the industry. The other part that if you're really trying to get sizable chunks of money, how soon will you be able to apply what you've learned? Is this something very futuristic and which starts to put it into the nice to know or nice to have kind of topics? Or I could go to this conference and I can come back and I could be applying this next week. And so that kind of stuff makes it a very saleable idea to people who are trying to control their training dollars. And then we talked about it a few seconds ago. Does this expand the network? Am I getting to meet the people that I need to meet to make my career more successful, to benefit the organization, to benefit the team that I'm working with? And so finally, of course, we hinted at it a little bit. How much is it going to cost? If you're going to the boss and say, well, I've got this 2-hour conference I want to go to and it only costs $10K, somebody's going to ask you, so make sure, how am I going to get the return on investment from the $10K for the 2-hour conference? Is it really worth it? And so it's going to be a tougher sell if you can't connect the cost and the investment people are making and how that's going to benefit the organization and how they might get that true return on investment. And so the earlier you can plan this with your boss and with your mentor, the better. If you're waiting to the last second, then you're making it a crisis and you're not really helping out. The training dollars are typically assigned at the beginning of the fiscal year, and there's a budget for that in almost every organization. Okay, well, so give your boss a chance to put you into the budget as opposed to waiting till the conference is upon them. And those training dollars are gone because other people were ahead of you, and now there's no chance to get into the conference budget. So that's sort of at least a a grouping of questions that I think are worth asking as the mentee. Ask yourself these questions about, is it relevant and current? Am I going to be with the right folks, the credible experts? How soon I be able to apply what I learned? Does it expand the network in a meaningful way? And what's the cost and is it worth it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and honing in on that cost piece a little bit, you talked about training dollars, that just about every organization and company that at least I'm aware of has training dollars set aside or professional development in some form or fashion, right? And so you as the mentee, you want to have some of those dollars earmarked for you to learn, either go to some training event or to go to a conference and not only learn skills but build your network as well. The earlier the better. And do not get discouraged if there aren't training dollars this year for you for that particular event. Put it on your development plan for next year or 2 years from now, and maybe then you'll be able to attend. I think there's also this discouragement that we want to avoid as well, that planning ahead is better not only in general project management, but just in career growth and in career development as well.
Absolutely. The sort of corollary for this conversation that is worth springing up, I think. And I talked about a minute ago about going to a music training that sounds like fun for me, but it doesn't benefit the organization. On the other side of that coin, often these conferences are in locations that sound really fun. Vegas comes to mind, Orlando comes to mind, take your pick. And so if you're going to ask for one of those conferences, then I would suggest that you make sure that you make it clear what the value of the conference is without spending a lot of time talking about how cool it is that it happens to be in Vegas or Orlando. And we had very specific examples that we experienced. You know, as we said before, we worked for the government for a long time, and you can imagine there's some significant oversight from the government about where people go to conferences. Well, so as a very clear example of being able to go to an important conference, DEF CON, which is the sort of the premier hacker conference in the US, is held in Vegas every year.
And not just hackers for internal government, but hackers.
Oh, no. It's open to anybody. It's a
Yeah.
public conference, and it's a very widely attended by all sorts of, frankly, good guys and bad guys in the hacking world, because there's a lot of learning goes on there. There is training that's only available at that conference for people who are serious cyber hackers, including the good ones, the white hats. And so it's critical that you make the case and try and make it clear what's going to be coming out of that. And then the other part that has to be part of this when you're asking those questions is make sure that you have established a very trusting relationship with your supervisor, whoever's going to be paying for this. Because if they can't trust you, then they probably ain't sending you to those places. And so, as we've said often before, you want to build bridges with people long before you actually need them. And so building that trust with your supervisor so they know, yeah, okay, I know it's in Vegas, but during the day when the conference is going on, you're going to be actually doing a lot to learn and bring important pieces back to the organization. You're going to do a lot of professional development, and it's going to be worth our while to send you to these things. So we are very familiar with places that provide oversight that assumes bad intent from the people who are going to attend those conferences. Fortunately, I don't think that's a universal truth in all companies. And so it's just up to the mentee at that point to make sure they have built the trusting relationship. It says, yeah, I know it's in Vegas, but I'm going to go there and I'm going to get a lot out of it. And that's all you really need to worry about, boss.
Yeah. Yeah. And when they come back from said
Okay.
training or
Mhm.
conference, then it is incumbent on the mentee to demonstrate the value of going and for the organization or the company to spend the money
So you
on
have
that.
some recommendations on how they can do that?
Yeah. And mentors, this is your opportunity to help your mentees make sure that them attending a training or conference is highly valued by the organization. So encourage your mentees to come back and share a 30-minute talk with their team about what they learned at the training or the conference or who they met at the training or the conference. Maybe they can take an idea that they learned and create a quick process improvement opportunity internal to the organization based on something they learned. Or be able to employ one new tool or a template or a practice that they learned, pilot that within 60 days of returning. All of those things go towards keeping that bridge strong in terms of trust between the employee and whoever it is that approves them spending money to attend training and conferences. And so, really, the mentor can ask the mentee, if you attend, how will you multiply the value by bringing something back to others? This trains mentees to think like leaders and actually apply what they learned and not just consumers of the training or the discussions at a conference.
So, anything else that they should be doing as they come back from the conference? I mean, is it just about sharing what they learned, or is there more to it than that?
Well, it's also, as we mentioned earlier, networking is key. So, networking, especially at conferences, is as easily as important as the learning. And so, mentors, this is you giving an opportunity to coach folks on how to network well. Have them identify 3 to 5 people that they want to meet at a conference. Often you'll see an attendee list or at least a speaker list before attending. Have the mentee take a look at that list and identify 3 to 5 people that they'd like to go up and introduce themselves to those folks. Help them prepare a 15-second intro. You don't want it to be a 2.5 minute life story, but when you're meeting folks at a conference, what's a 15-second intro that you can say who you are and what you do? And then when you are engaging with people at a training or a conference, it's very easy for us to say, so what do you do? That's such an easy question that we ask at a conference or when we're meeting somebody for the first time. Instead, there's a lot more powerful questions that you can ask, like, are you seeing this problem? And if so, how are you handling it? Identify a problem and ask the individual how they are handling it. What have you found to be the best way to address a particular challenge? What do you see as the next big thing in our industry? What do you see as our biggest challenges in our industry? And all of those things, all of those questions can really elicit strong conversation rather than just the what do you do question that often happens.
Absolutely. I mean, that's obviously the way to engage folks. And it's a way to start to build a relationship with folks. Networking isn't just about meeting them, it's actually establishing the relationship and continuing the relationship. And certainly as a mentor, I would be advising people to keep that. That's how you build a network. And, now that you've met them, you do the connection, you find things that you can talk about. You find people with common sets of problems and common working issues and all the kinds of things that bind people together. You build that relationship. And then, within 48 hours, make sure that after you've been at the conference with them, you reach out and you make sure that they know that you want this relationship to continue.
Hmm.
So it's just critical. It's not just about having a nice time at the conference. It's building the relationships that you'll carry on, potentially for a long time in your professional life.
Yeah, try connecting with them on LinkedIn. If they've given you a card, then connect with them in the contact information that they sent you in their card. Do something that follows up that says, hey, it was really nice to meet you. Thank you for the conversation about X, Y, and Z. And so that it triggers them, you were the one that I talked to about that particular issue. And then follow up and continue, every 3 months or so, reach out, say, how are you doing? How can I help? And keep that network going. Now, they've come back. They've given a debrief. And you as the mentor, what kind of questions do you ask to see if it's worth it?
Right. So it may seem obvious after what we talked about as the things that we wanted them to prepare for in the beginning, but they're not giving that outbrief to the mentor. They're giving that to their team and so forth. And it's not a set of trick questions. Okay, you're back from the conference or the training. What did you learn? How and when are you going to apply that? And what are you going to share or teach with your team? It's simply asking the questions you told them to prepare for when they were headed out to do the conference. But it's the follow up, and it's, as we talked about in our last podcast, it's the accountability piece. And
Hmm.
it's not angry or like I'm, playing stump the chump with somebody. I'm asking them questions because first off, if I'm their mentor, I care about whether they learned something. And second, I'm forcing them to think about what they learned and how they want to apply that and how they're going to use it. I want that as part of the relationship I have with a mentee, so they know that I'm interested in what they're doing, and it's sort of forcing the issue for them to think through those thoughts.
Now, Bill, what if you have a mentee that comes to you and has like a list of 10 either trainings or conferences that they want to attend, throughout a year? How do you help that person prioritize which ones to?
Well, so clearly, it's going to be what's going to be of the most benefit. And so you think about where are the emerging trends in the field in which they find themselves, and where the leadership development or strategic skills they're going to be able to grow out of this, and which ones have the high caliber networking people, the folks that are the leaders in the industry, or the folks that from whom you think you can learn the most. And potentially, particularly as they start to get their feet under them, is this going to be a chance to showcase the work that they've done? There's no doubt in my experience in attending either training or conferences, if I was the one presenting, there was so much more interaction with the crowd, because now people want to come talk to you about what it is you presented. And so it's an incredibly powerful networking opportunity that comes by being one of the speakers. And so if I'm talking to him as a mentor, I'm going to say, yes, of course, you want to learn things. You want to be at a place where there's high caliber networking. But if there's a chance for you to brief, I'm going to be recommending that that's the one you should be getting to, because that's the way that first off, it's going to build your presentation skills. Second, it's going to increase your networking opportunities. And third, it's going to broaden people knowing who you are and where you fit into the industry. So I certainly don't think that's magic thought about how to prioritize, but sometimes that's not the first way that mentees, in my experience, have approached this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so wrapping up, if a training or conference doesn't clearly support a growth goal or deepen your expertise or expand your network in a meaningful way, skip it. We actually created a checklist for mentors to give to your mentees to help them determine if a training event or conference is worth the time and cost. If you're interested in this free resource, email us at mentoringirl@gmail.com and we will send it to you for free. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mentoring in Real Life. If you have thoughts or questions, feel free to leave us a comment or send us an email, which we've included in the show notes. If you've liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate the podcast, 5 stars only, of course, and share with a friend. Until next time, help others climb.